What was I looking at? What could be worse than this?
Hey Marquez.
What?
We need to film our worst movies of 2017 video. You ready?
Yeah, I guess so. So guys, unfortunately we've gotten to that time of the year where we have to talk about the worst movies of the previous year. And 2017 actually had some pretty good movies, but it also had its fair share of utter crap.
And since it's more fun to talk about bad movies together, and so that we're able to talk about each of these movies as least as possible, we've decided to compromise on each of our lists so that we could have just one complete list.
Yeah, so here we are with our worst movies of 2017. And we're going to go ahead and start off this video with our dishonorable mentions. Movies like The Dark Tower, Don't Hang Up, Geostorm, and the first half of Thor Ragnarok. Number 15.
Kong Skull Island was the second movie in the proposed MonsterVerse that began with the Godzilla movie in 2014, and it was kind of a downhill from that Godzilla movie.
A lot of people actually like this movie because they found it had some entertainment value and it's pretty enjoyable. Now, one aspect I can see that, but if you're going to go in this movie for some substance, like actual characters, you're not going to get that because this movie doesn't have characters. It has these little body bags that King Kong just kind of throws around, and because of that, you don't ever get a sense of, you never really get scared for anybody of these characters because you never really care about them.
I've seen a lot of people who say that a lot of critics and a lot of people have watched this movie in the wrong way, and that they should be watching it for the entertainment value. But you can't really say that when the first movie in this universe, Godzilla, actually had characters that you cared about.
And whenever we're talking about characters with no depth to them, we're not just talking about some of the side characters. We're talking about the main characters, like Tom Hiddleston's character, Brie Larson's character. And the only character that I literally cared about through the entire movie was John C. Reilly's character. And I think it was because it's not like his character had a lot of depth to them, but he had more depth than all the other freaking characters. Number 14.
Unforgettable was pretty much any movie that you can find on the Lifetime network. There's really nothing special about it.
The dialogue was pretty terrible, and if you top it off with the bad acting that went with it, it really just did not help its case. And this movie, at times, kind of became a bore fest to me.
And talking about Borefest, the Snowman was probably the biggest one of them all because the trailers made this movie seem so cool and so interesting, but once you go into it, it's such a slow-paced movie. And not to say that all slow-paced movies are bad, but this one just, there was like literally so many times where I just like lost my interest because there's nothing really going on.
They had so much potential. The actors that they chose for this movie could have made this movie great. And then the book I heard was actually really good. I never read it myself, but I heard it was really good.
And J.K. Simmons' character with his weird accent and taking pictures of random women's boobs, he was almost completely pointless to the movie. And there were certain times where the Snowman tried to have scenes that were just there for shock value, but everything that led up to it didn't lead into it properly to where it would be a big shock.
Val Kilmer is also in this movie, and whenever I heard that, I was kind of excited because I haven't seen him in a lot of movies in quite some time. But his character is on all these scenes that take place, I believe, in like the past. And they don't really need to be in this movie almost at all. The characters don't really have that much there. And Michael Fassbender's character, he's like a drunk, but there's not really a whole bunch there for his character, something for me to latch onto. And really the best thing about this movie was the laughs we could get whenever they took advantage of saying Michael Fassbender's character's name, Harry Hole. Number By this point, they've really exhausted the character of Jack Sparrow, who's pretty much drunk 24/7 and just makes all these ridiculous, irrational decisions. This movie is just so boring. Like, the very beginning starts off with a bang, and it's not good bang, but it's a bang, and it's ridiculous, but it starts off kind of interesting. But this whole movie, after that, just gets really boring.
Yeah, and I think this movie's about, what, 2 hours and 9 minutes, I think we looked up. But it honestly feels a lot longer than that.
Number 11. Do you want me to have you in this clip? Or am I going to cut you out?
Well, I'm so I'm being
Huh?
Or do you want to put the poster on?
That's what I thought I was going to do. I'm sorry. Now, Zach didn't see Underworld Blood Wars, but I got to see it, and it really wasn't that good of a movie at all. The movie kind of is pretty slow, and not like slow because they're trying to build up characters or build up situations. It's just slow to be slow. And then the writing is pretty terrible at times. Not just the dialogue, but with different things that could maybe in the movie like earlier. Because there's scenes, especially during the big fight scene at the end, whenever the main character, and I don't even know the name of the main character, I never really cared to get into this movie, but whenever the main character comes in, she does this move where she kind of zooms through the entire room and kind of just kills several of the people, like real quick. And I'm trying to figure out why she didn't just do that with all of the bad guys, because it kind of just could have cut this movie shorter. And even though that could be seen as a bad thing, I would have loved it, because then this movie would have ended a lot earlier. Now, my friends, here's where things start getting a little interesting with our number 10. So the Bye Bye Man is probably worse than some of the movies we have higher on this list. So you may be wondering, Marquez and Zach, why do you have this in your number 10 ranking?
But I want you to imagine this. A horror movie that takes itself way too seriously. And in the beginning of the third act, the main character is driving to confront an old woman who might have answers about what's haunting him. And this happens.
Hello, loneliness. I think I'm gonna cry. Bye bye love. Bye bye sweet caress. Hello emptiness. I feel like I could die. Bye bye my love.
And a scene involving a train conductor.
There's a train! A real train!
No! And a scene involving a librarian. And many other scenes like those are just what make this movie so enjoyable to watch. Pretty much the premise alone for this movie is just so stupid to begin with.
Yeah, and then the acting from the main character is probably the only acting that I can say is like okay, but nothing great. The acting from the girlfriend is awful.
There were a lot of scenes where it felt like they should have lasted for a couple of seconds longer, but they just cut it short, and it was so abrupt and so obvious.
I kind of love this movie. It is so enjoyable. It's one of those movies that is just, so many things are just so terrible about it that it's actually just really hilarious and actually pretty entertaining to watch. Number 9.
Me and Marquez didn't hate Flatliners as much as a lot of critics and other people did, but at the same time it was a pretty bad movie. The beginning itself was actually pretty decent, but towards the middle and especially the end were just really, really awful.
This is another movie that thinks it can become successful just by pure shock value. Like in the middle of the movie, the main character, Ellen Page, dies. It's just so stupid and random. I don't really feel sad when it happens.
And this movie had a lot of tonal conflicts to where they couldn't decide if they wanted to be a sci-fi movie or a horror movie. And wherever they would tread into the horror elements, they really relied on a lot of jump scares.
Number 8. Friend Request kind of just starts off stupid. It begins with a scene that happens later on in the movie, and like the exact scene. And a lot of good movies do this, but whenever actual good movies do this, it has an effect on the storytelling, or it has an effect on how we're perceiving the movie. But the way it happens is there's no reason for it to happen. It had no effect on how we felt about the movie at all.
And the runtime really could have been cut down a lot if whenever the cops start interrogating the main character about these horrible videos that are being uploaded to her Facebook by the girl that's haunting her throughout this movie. If she would just tell the cops and show the cops physically that she isn't able to delete the videos because the ghost isn't letting her to delete the videos, if she would just show the cops that, it would have made them realize that it's not her fault. Plus, the cops should be able to tell where a Facebook video is uploaded and realize that it wasn't her being the one who is uploading the videos. Especially because the main character's friend even was able to sort of hack into her Facebook and look at the code and realize the code was some weird ghost code that wasn't made by humans. Now, I do want to say that this movie actually did have a lot of creepy moments, but I also do want to say that at the beginning, whenever they showed the girl who would end up killing herself and then haunting the main character, they tried way too hard to make her creepy.
Number 7.
Wish Upon was probably one of the most infuriating movies of 2017 because the main character, once she finds out that the wishes she's making with this box that she found, once she realizes that people are dying because of it, she just continues to make wishes.
All the death scenes in this movie are pretty over the top. Probably my favorite one is whenever, I think it was like her uncle is like getting in a bathtub and he falls and hits his head in the bathtub. And they could have just ended it there. He hits his head and he kind of starts bleeding, but he's not dead yet. He like falls underneath the faucet and the water's just like falling on his face. And he's like trying to get up, but he can't. And it's just, it takes a few minutes for him to finally die.
And then by the end of the movie, they try to show that the main character had this huge obsession with wanting to have the box. But there was no build up to it like at all. It's just like a huge shift. Because even like right before they showed that, she was wanting to get rid of the box. And then all of a sudden, like the next scene, she was wanting it like so bad that she was fighting with a friend to have it. Amityville Awakening really shouldn't have had a theatrical release. It takes place in the real world where the original Amityville movies exist as actual movies, and the main character is actually moving into the house that the original Amityville movies were based on. And this sort of added just a cheesy vibe to it.
Other than things a little here and there where you can see things and then maybe hear things, this movie is pretty boring all throughout until like the last, I'm gonna say 15, maybe 20 minutes. The whole movie just has this weird feeling of like nothing happening and then randomly everything happening. Number 5.
Kidnap was originally supposed to come out a couple years ago, but the company that was making it, Relativity Media, went bankrupt, so they had to attach themselves to another company. And it's pretty obvious that this movie was pretty much thrown together and pushed into theaters. There's so many times where the movie could have been cut a lot shorter, but the main character, played by Halle Berry, made some of the most horrible, moronic decisions that have ever been made by a character in a long time.
We were just yelling at a screen. I mean, there is a scene whenever you realize that, you know, after they steal the kid, that the weapon they have is a knife, and they're like, if you keep following us, we're gonna kill this kid. They don't say that, but they kind of show it. And so Halle Berry keeps following them secretively, and they end up meeting in this field of grass, and the guy decides to walk out of the car with this knife, the weapon they have, and Halle Berry starts backing up.
In her car.
Yeah, like this guy's gonna come and freaking start stabbing the car or something. Like, it doesn't matter what he does. You have a car, he has a knife. So she backs up and decides to stop and then go forward a little bit. She's like, oh, I can run this guy over. So she starts driving forward and she just stops the car for no reason. And so the guy gets back in the car. Then they decide to go back in the car, and the woman walks out and starts talking about money. And she's like, I have money, I'll give you money. So she decides to ride in the car with Halle Berry as they go get her money. And to me, if I'm riding with somebody in a car, the one thing I don't want the driver to do is to like stop driving the car while their foot is like still on the gas, to them to just not have their hands on the wheel, right? So this woman decides to try to kill Halle Berry
while she's driving.
Yeah, while she's driving, she decides to choke her, to try to choke Halle Berry while she's driving. You don't want to do that, woman. I'm sorry, but you're not going to want to try to kill the driver. There's a scene whenever they go to the house. It's at the end of the movie, and whenever she calls the police, and the police tell her, okay, hide somewhere to be safe, and we're on our way. What do you do in that situation? You hide somewhere to be safe until the police get there, right? No, she decides to walk around the entire place.
Yeah, and especially because she's in the house where the kids are, because the two people have kidnapped other kids, including her son, and the two bad people aren't even in the house anymore, so she's just alone with the kids, and the police tell her to hide, and she doesn't do that.
And in fact, at this time, the husband is dead, and the wife walked out, and so she's just walking around trying to figure out what's going on. I'm like, and at this point you realize that she doesn't want to kill the kid, because the kid she's going to sell this kid for money in some human trafficking ring or something like that. And so Halle Berry starts walking around the place like trying to be the hero. They don't try to be the hero. Also, Halle Berry has this big knife, like she has a weapon, and this woman doesn't know she's in the house yet. She almost walks up right behind her where she could literally just kill the woman right there. And she decides to not do that, and she puts the knife down and walks away because she forgets the knife on the table, you know? And it's just so many stupid decisions, and it's just so infuriating. Oh my goodness.
You took the wrong kid.
Number 4.
Jeepers Creepers 3 had a one-day release in theaters because of controversy surrounding the director and writer Victor Salva. So luckily I was able to see this movie for free on the Sci-Fi Channel on TV, and I didn't have to spend money and give money to the studio. And I'm really happy that I didn't spend a single penny on this movie, because this was a pile of garbage. I actually really enjoyed the first Jeepers Creepers movie. It's actually one of my favorite horror movies. The second one was sort of shaky. I didn't really like it that much. But then this one just truly did not deserve to be made. First of all, it's set in between the first and second movie, which doesn't make any sense why they decided to do that, because the second movie ended with the cliffhanger. We've been waiting to see that story continue, but then they just decide to go with the in between the first and second one, and it doesn't really add any tension because we know pretty much what happened in the second one, and it doesn't add any story to this trilogy. Second of all, this movie just looks so cheaply made. The creature just was wearing like a red sweater, and he looked so human in this movie. And they brought back the Be Eating You truck from the first one, and they tried to sort of delve into the character of the truck, which was sort of weird, and was sort of a weird decision to have. And I keep saying decisions, but they were just so many weird decisions about this movie, and I don't really know what kind of direction they were trying to go with it. Guys, if you want to watch this movie, maybe you're a fan of the Jeepers Creepers series and you want to see if this one is truly awful or not, I advise you to do your best to see it for free and not give money to it, because if you spend money, it goes directly to the director, who is known and convicted of molesting a 12-year-old boy and recording it. And this even happened before the first Jeepers Creepers movie came out.
Number 3. What to say about Chips? You know how whenever you watch an Adam Sandler movie and you say, man, that movie, the comedy was so terrible, it was so cringy, you know, and you're able to just look at it and, you know, you're able to pay attention because of how terrible it is. It keeps you there. You know how that happens? Because that's what comedies have, in all honesty. If a movie's funny and it's a comedy, that's what it has going for it. It's funny or it's cringy, right? I've never seen a comedy movie that is neither. All the jokes in this movie are not cringy. They don't fall flat. They're just nothing.
And they relied on a lot of vulgar comedy, and I don't mind vulgar jokes, but as long as they're like actually jokes. In Chips, they just said something dirty and just expected it to be funny, and it's just like, okay, that was a joke, okay, let's move on then. It didn't even pay respect to the original Chips series.
Now for our last two, it's pretty difficult trying to figure out what was what, because these two movies were pretty equally terrible in our eyes. But we had to really do some deep thinking to try to figure out, was one of them a tiny bit more enjoyable, or maybe did one of them have a little bit more of a reason to be made, just by a smidge? And this is how we figured out the very tiny line between our last two picks. Number 2.
Transformers: The Last Knight was definitely the worst in the Transformers franchise. because I honestly liked the first, third, and fourth Transformers movies. I know they get a lot of hate, but I actually like those. The second one was pretty bad, but the fifth one truly takes a cake because it was just such an awful mess.
I honestly didn't like the fourth one very much, but it did have some interesting aspects to it. And one of those more interesting aspects was the fact that it actually had a story going through it. This movie decides to jump the shark with the beginning and starts off with the Knights of the Round Table, I believe. And just to show you, like, oh, the Transformers have been on Earth for this long? That's crazy, just to surprise you. But it doesn't work at all. And it kind of brings you the Merlin staff, and I don't even know what the staff actually did. Until the end, he just kind of stabs it in something. And the whole story running through it doesn't even really feel like that much of a story. It just feels like a whole bunch of things that kind of happen, and they decide to kind of place them next to each other, hoping that it actually creates a cohesive story, but it doesn't.
And they introduce this little girl, and they try to have her be like this huge character, but she literally did nothing throughout this entire movie. And honestly, there's times where she sort of disappeared, and you sort of forgot that she was even in the movie.
Hey man, did we do our number one?
Oh crap.
What?
What was the number one again? Oh crap. The Emoji Movie.
The Emoji Movie. So if I could say one thing that made this movie worse than Transformers: The Last Night, what would it be, Zach?
The fact that it had literally no purpose of being made, and like, oh my gosh.
Let's think about Transformers 5. Was it 5 or I don't know, 5 or 6? 5. Okay, let's just think about that. Transformers, okay? Maybe they shouldn't have gone so far, but it was a pretty popular story.
Yeah, it made a lot of money.
Yeah, it made a lot of money. Had a reason to be there. Emoji Movie. What was this movie about? It's about emojis. It had one of the most freaking generic plots in these little family kids movies, these little family animation movies like Wreck-It Ralph. Except Wreck-It Ralph did quite a bit better.
Yeah, Wreck-It Ralph, Lego Movie. There's like so many movies that are like this, but did the story so much better than the Emoji Movie did.
Oh my goodness. So this movie was maybe pretty angry, considering the fact in this movie it's a kids movie, right? So that means it can be a little like pretty upbeat, pretty funny, but it's so boring. The jokes aren't any good at all.
And they're actually really cringy.
Yeah, we actually sat in this theater, and the theater was filled with kids. Okay, the theater had kids all through it, and it was so silent.
The emoji characters aside, that was pretty horrible enough. But then you get to the human characters and the human storyline, and that storyline is arguably worse than the emoji storyline, because it's about a high school freshman, I think he's a freshman, who wants to talk to a girl that he likes, and I guess she's pretty popular, but he doesn't know how to talk to her.
What should I do? Be chill. What?
Send an emoji.
Whenever mad, everybody loves him because he's able to change his face and be all animated. You know, he sends this girl this emoji, and she walks up to him and said, "Oh, you show your emotions so well." This movie is the reason why there is not a Popeye animated movie. It took the place of a movie that really did have a reason to be made. And you're gonna put freaking Patrick Stewart in this movie as Poop? What are you doing?
I really want to know how much of a paycheck he got for this.
I want to see the freaking conversation when they asked him to be in this movie. Did he just say yeah? In fact, I think he did. I think that he actually had an interview about this movie, like he was freaking proud of it. Oh my goodness, Patrick Stewart, man.
And then James Corden. I've never liked James Corden, and he played one of the most annoying characters I've seen in a kids movie, which is a high five character. I really feel sorry for the animators of this movie, because you can see they actually did their best, because the animation was actually like the only good thing about it, and I feel sorry because they put their efforts into this piece and pile of crap.
Guys, that is the end of that crap fest. Okay, we are so glad that we finally decided to end that. But we also enjoyed making this video for y'all because we do enjoy making videos. And so don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Also, let us know what you thought about this video. Also, if you have a ranking of your own for the worst movies of 2017, put that down in the comments below.
And also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at 2 Awesome Men.
And as always, thank you so much for watching, and you will see us later.